Hidden away in the Cotswolds is one of the most enchanting doorways I've ever seen. Framed by ancient trees and glowing with dappled light, it looks as though it belongs in a fairy tale. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to paint the rich greens, the warm stonework, and most importantly, how to create that beautiful light that draws the eye straight to the doorway. We'll take it step by step using simple techniques that you can apply to your own future paintings. So grab your brushes and let's paint this magical Cotswolds doorway together. So we are creating a grounding, that sort of underpainting, if you like, of these intense two variations of the yellow. And I'm just at this stage painting around the grass area of the lamp, but we'll come on to that later and do a little bit of variation to it. So this covers the whole of the painting, and you'll need to do some mopping up at the edges because there's quite a bit of water there. So this is a good grounding. So as you know, do from light to dark. This is a very good example of how we do that process. And then we've got some light red going on and some Paynes Grey. And as always, I have a dedicated mixing brush that preserves my painting brushes for a longer period of time. Now this old doorway, very old, battered, has various rivets in it and so forth, and metal studs, and that is quite quaint. We are at the Stowe on the Wold in Gloucestershire, Cotswolds, England, often referred to as the Doors of Durham. St. Edward's Church. This is a 14th century portal. We'll be coming on to the yew trees either side of it later, planted in the 1700s, and they're still living. And apparently, this location was inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien, Doors of Durham. This is the Wastegate of Moria in The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien was a professor at Oxford University, and we do know from accounts that he did visit this location quite often, wasn't too far from Oxford City. I used to go to Oxford City quite regularly, having lived quite nearby for a long time. Very interesting location. So we're going to build up in this painting over a gradual period of time. This is a harder one to achieve because there's so much detail involved, but we do like to show variation on our site, Ross and I. And as I say, it's very much a case of building up wash upon wash, drying off with the hairdryer, then adding some more, and so forth and so on. The brushes today we're using just four. We've got the Quill number 8, rounds 8, 4, and 1. Arches paper, the one I like to use the most, 300 pounds rough, 11.5 inches by 7.5. It's only taped around the edges so that it doesn't slide around. If it did, it would be very distracting for you for the video. And as always, my board is at an angle, sloping from the top to the bottom, about 10-15 degrees, no more than that. Block of wood at the top of my board. Very useful for when doing large wet and wet washes, especially when painting skies, clouds, etc. And various other things, which you'll see in the various tutorials. So we're gradually building this up, once again going from light to dark. And the fact that the lamp is a nice dark color is helpful to us because it shows a good contrast construction of the lamp. But of course, there'll be nice light emanating. And for that dark color, I've mixed up, you can mix up some Paynes Grey with some light red. That gives you a nice dark color. as you know from previous tutorials, I don't like to use a black straight from the tube, such as a Lent black. I find it can be distracting in certain paintings. If you have a mixture of two colors to get your black, then you have a little bit more nuance going on. There's a bit more variation. One could argue it's not so relevant in this case. In a landscape situation, it would be much more relevant, but it's just a habit that I have, a little idiosyncrasy, if you wish. Now on the door, we've got the latch and the keyhole. So make sure and remember those. And we got the various slats that we'll be building up, and all these studs, etc., and weather beaten and variation in value here and there and in tone. So it will be very interesting door. Main feature, of course, of the painting, but surrounded by all these interesting shapes and different things going on, etc., as well. So a very interesting subject matter today. Now, the crack where the doors meet, of course, is wider and more defined. And then the slats where they join are thinner. So just bear that in mind when you tackle that. We are nearly a third of the way through this tutorial. It will build up very fast, and because of repetition here and there, the different stages, you will see we jump ahead a bit. But if you're painting along for this one, you can, of course, pause the video here and there in order to catch up. Thankfully, on the door, as I mentioned, it's quite varied in both color and value. And so there's some nice reds and darks going on, and there's some light, of course, reflecting from the lamp. So it's very interesting, and it adds to the mystery of this subject matter. It also emphasizes the age, which is the most important aspect of this subject. At the base of the door there, it would be much darker. It gets knocked, it gets kicked. It's there's when it rains and so forth, the kicking up, etc., onto the door. So it's all very weather beaten. But you see, hopefully, the point of starting with a wash of our glowing light color over the whole painting. It is something to bear in mind for future subjects that you'll be painting, to use that method to achieve the light. It has a nice archway to the door, which adds even more interest. And you'll see me occasionally, as I do in various tutorials, have some tissue to hand so that you can just dab and change the intensity of something you've laid down to get the light value, etc., or to mop up any excess. Do have that to hand, and have some to the side so that you can clean off brushes as necessary occasionally, take off any excess, and have a spare piece of paper beside your board so that you can practice any color mix-ins and any techniques you might wish to employ in the painting, such as a scraping technique, etc. If you read up the history of this location, you'll see that it was a Saxon church initially on the grounds, and it was replaced in the 11th century by the Normans, following the invasion by William the Conqueror, replaced with a new building on the same site, which is so often the case. If you visit England, you will see from history, written history, that that has occurred on many occasions. They use the existing site of a church to change it to their own construction. These two trees are very useful because they frame the painting for us, and they provide the opportunity for nice contrasts with the light catching them, and then casting shadows on the opposite side. With this painting, you certainly are making good use of the watercolor techniques. That was about watercolor techniques. As you build up different washes, transparencies, and so forth, different glazes. These various little slatted windows above the doorway are quite dark in normal lighting, but with the lamp glowing, we've got the opportunity of some reflected light going on in parts of its construction. And the brickwork is quite interesting, as I say, framed by the trees, and varied, as you'll see when you study photos of the location. And there's a combination of various bricks and masonry, blocks, etc., stonework, and so it's extremely varied. I'd like to remind everyone who subscribes of our monthly giveaways. Do keep in tune for those, and watch the results as the wheel is spun to choose at random who the winner of the various prizes is that month. Now I'm using some Sap Green for a change, mixed with the Winsor Yellow to get my variation in green. And later on, you'll see that quite unusually, I will use some Cobalt Blue with some permanent Sap Green as well to give us a very different glowing green. And I'm using the scraping technique for the foliage. As you can see, just scraping it on. And this texture of the paper is perfect for this. The arches rough texture. and tissue to hand to make sure I don't have too much on the brush. So that's coming together quite well. And now you can see it really is giving that feeling of being framed by the doors, by the trees by the side of the doors. You have various options when painting foliage like this. You can start with your darks, where shadow will be, and then with your lights, because you will be doing at that stage negative painting. Alternatively, you can do it the traditional way, start with the light foliage, and then drop in the darker shadows in between later, and fuse the two here and there together. And as you progress with the painting, your eye will flick around from different parts and you'll notice different things you wish to enhance, such as occasionally here and there, I've enhanced the reflective lighting of the trees and different surfaces, etc. On this occasion, there you will see quite soon, there's lots of fallen dead leaves on the ground, um, but the pathway is cleared of them. And that's a useful thing because it also helps lead us into the painting. So drop down some clear wash of water first of all, then have a grey mixture, a blue and red, and start at the bottom and pull it up a little, but preserve that light area as you get closer and closer to the doorway. And then mop up with tissue on the edges to avoid creep back. Now just add in a little bit more light reflection emanating from the lamp above the doorway. Now you'll want a mixture, I would suggest, of Indian yellow, light red and Paynes Grey for these various fallen dead leaves on either side of the doorway. But at an angle, this, as I say, it helps lead you in. The doorway itself on this occasion is quite enough, but we're just using the layout of the painting to our advantage even more in that respect, as it so leads us in as a pathway. Once again, using the scraping technique, started lighter and then go to the darker fallen leaves. And this one's nearly completed. I think it's proven to be a very interesting subject matter. Ross does find some interesting ones for me. He does lots of research on what we should be doing tutorials on. And I think this was an excellent choice. So here we have the completed painting. As I say, a slightly more advanced level, but I do hope you have a go at that one. I think you can employ your various techniques with it. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.